Hey, so it's Black Power Magic Hour. We got a guest tonight, Shanna Sabio, Executive Director of Grow NYC. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me. And it's Grow House NYC. There is another Grow NYC, which is all about like plants and
Oh,
produce
Grow
and
House
stuff.
NYC. Oh, not Grow
Yeah, that's something
NYC.
my wife would care about.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I care
Grow
about
House.
Grow. I care about Grow NYC too.
Yeah.
But that's not your brainchild. This is
No,
yeah.
No, that
Okay.
sounds
I'm
like the
gonna take
actual
credit for that.
city project, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so tell us about this. It's pretty much this came up around Juneteenth. I saw like the different news about it, but also heard about this for a long time. Just knowing about like New York City history and all for going off again, like about this like flat because we know about the African burial ground down in Wall Street. So now you're telling me there's one in Brooklyn. Can you talk about this new development that's going on right now?
Yeah, it's funny. It's really not that new. As I started doing my research, I found out that the city did an archaeological study around 2000, which is not too long after the first African burial ground was found in Lower Manhattan. And they basically kept it quiet that there's one in the heart of Flatbush. And then in 2020, de Blasio, Eric Adams, and Mathieu Eugene announced that they wanted to put affordable housing on top of the African burial ground, knowing fully well it was an African burial ground. And I kind of found out about it through like a beautiful twist of fate, is what I've been saying recently, because my organization, Grow House NYC, has been taking young people across the African diaspora for about 3 years now. And the last time when we came back from Ghana, we really felt such a deep responsibility to try to figure out a way that we could empower young people to feel like they owned a piece of their city, combat gentrification and all those things. And so we started looking for city-owned property because we were going to petition the city to have a community land trust that was going to be run by young people. And we found this site. And it was kind of like, what's going to happen here? Because it's a nice piece of land. I figured that developers were already looking at it, but at that time, I didn't know that it was an African burial ground until I got an email from Farm School NYC saying that there was a coalition that was forming around it. And so we started to get involved. And at the time that we joined the coalition, it was largely non-Black. And so as a Black person, I was kind of like, this needs to be Black-led because these are African bones. And so how can we make this a Black-led coalition? And so now we're Black-led coalition that are, fighting to keep the city from building on top of ancestral bones.
So my question for you would be: do you
Mm-hmm.
think that De Blasio and Eric Adams thought that it might be like a cool, funny joke to have affordable housing be placed in an area where after people move in, now they've got like all kinds of weird curses and stuff that they got to deal with because their
Via the
whole
next Netflix like
they're
horror
living
movie
on top
show.
of
Yeah,
basically cursed bones.
yeah.
Look, American Horror Story Flatbush Edition. I don't know what they were thinking, but I feel like for them it's all about the money. That's how it's always been. And what they've been doing instead is, doing a community engagement process, quote unquote. That really hasn't had a lot of people showing up because they're not publicizing it. And so that way they get to check a box and say, we did a community engagement and, we
Wait,
reached
so,
out
so,
to the
so you're
community.
telling me that they are having public engagements to talk about the burial ground, but I haven't heard anything about this.
There
Like
you go.
that's crazy. Like you
No,
think it'd be
they were just
important? Hey,
wanted
some bones down the street. Maybe we should talk about it. I think it'd be
no
signs everywhere.
they
Like
just wanted to have a real life haunted house and then like have people like scratching out their own eyeballs. That's what I think.
so,
Look,
like so,
you and me both. I had to hear about it through an email, and I live in Flatbush. And I was like,
wow.
hmm. And, the thing about it is we had a town hall as a coalition, and our town hall had more people attend than their community engagement sessions. And that was just us reaching out through our
Because
networks, like, we're going to
yeah,
teach about this.
because I
You know
bet
you know what I think it
if you
was?
tell people there's bones down the street of black people is going to show up and hey, what's going on here? People would definitely be like, what is happening here? Like
So what they
Exactly.
did was they
you
put
know,
something official on an Outlook calendar that only went out to 7 people that in their own office, and then it was a meeting from 2:45 p.m. to 2:50 p.m.
on Zoom.
and yeah, on Zoom, and see, we got a paper trail. There's a see, we actually did it, but they did it in a way where nobody would really have to find out, so that they can just fast track their way to profits. That's how I look at it.
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly it. You got it. Hit it right on the head. And then, after we did our town hall, one of the things that we taught people at the town hall / teach-in was just to show up at this event and disrupt, right? They were having a community engagement the next day. So we showed up, their largest turnout ever. And then we just kept disrupting, like, no, we don't want housing here. And
That's
they
their
kept
worst
trying to
fucking
steer.
nightmare.
It was their
People
worst
actually
nightmare.
showing up.
Yeah.
So I want to. It's a relationship with the Dutch church that's actually on Flatbush. Is that are
Yes.
they at a relationship? You can talk about that because they seem to be renovating their church
On
right now.
Flatbush or in Flatbush? Are we talking Church Avenue?
No, it's a church on Church Avenue on
Yeah.
Flatbush.
Because they got mad churches on Church Avenue. Because all the churches want to
I'm
be
talking
on
about
Church
the
Avenue.
Flatbush Church on Church Avenue. That.
Oh, you talking about that big white one? That big white one that looks like super opulent?
No,
or is
no,
it a
it's on
different one?
It's on Flatbush and Church.
Oh, it's
Exactly.
on Flatbush and Church.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
the one that the one across the street from the Citibank.
Yeah. It's not.
Yeah.
Now I know what you're talking.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
gotcha. Because again, all the churches want to be on Church Avenue. So the one I thought of was that bougie looking one on Church Avenue, and what is that, between Rogers and whatever the next block is? Yeah. There's a really bougie, like, white church. There used to be a restaurant across the street that closed down. It was like a West Indian restaurant.
Rogers,
and then
on Rogers and Church.
no, on Church Avenue, between Rogers and then whatever the next building, the next block
Maybe
over,
I just
closer
blocked
to
it out of my
Flatbush.
mind because I'm like,
See, the thing is, I lived on that block
Yeah.
for a while. Like, actually,
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, Messiah lived with us for a little while too when we lived over there. When we lived on Rogers Avenue, right off of Church, so we would walk up and up. Because you remember they had that Modell Sporting Goods on Church Avenue across Flatbush Avenue, and you had that Citibank on one corner. On the opposite corner, you had that old beat up Models, but then you also had that church that was directly across the street, and then what is it, like a Chase Bank on the other corner? Yeah. So
I'm talking about the church that somehow Christians and had slaves. So I'm talking about
right,
Exactly.
the darker gray,
like a
stone
gray
church.
stone.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now I got you.
Yeah, so you
I
can talk
got
about like so have you been communicating with that church at all about what's going on? Like what's been happening with that? Like
The coalition has been communicating with that church. We haven't yet had like a full meeting with them, but the Reverend does seem to be open to have a discussion. Right now, we've just been doing walking tours to let the community know that, hey, this is an African burial ground. Because every time we're out there cleaning or putting up art, people are like, what's this? What's going on? And when we tell them it's an African burial ground, their minds are blown. They're like, I had no idea. I went to Erasmus. No one told me, just all these things. So it's like, yeah, we need to continue to raise awareness and then get a whole group of folks, Black folks, together and try to stop this.
Yeah, I don't think too many people think of an African burial ground and then think Brooklyn, New York. So I think it's very, very shocking even for myself to hear about that. And then my next question for you would be, if it's a sacred burial ground, what is the best case scenario? Do you stop development completely? Do you create a memorial there? Like, what do you think would, if you could snap your fingers like Thanos and get your wish, right? What would be the absolute best case scenario of what they would do with these grounds?
For me, like if I could snap my fingers, the burial ground actually extends even farther than that little lot. It extends across the street into the gas station and across the street into the post office area. And then right next door, there's a used car lot. It also extends over there and possibly further.
that's far.
But yeah, best case scenario is to reclaim all of that and really just make it more of a memorial. I think the way that the National Monument did in Lower Manhattan would be perfect. You engage HBCUs, students, locals from the area, do archaeological studies, then kind of make a beautiful monument, a place of learning where people can come and do a pilgrimage, even extend further along the block using green space garden beds, beautify the area, have markers of important historical sites. That would be like the best case scenario. So stopping development, because that is exactly what the archaeological study the city did in 2000 said, that there should not be any more disturbance of the grounds because there remains under there.
Yeah,
I hate to say it. I hate to be
I
the
want to
one to
share this
say
real
it,
quick.
but then you see the very next year what happened in our city. And then, like, it's hard for me not to make the connection. Like, if you're saying, hey, we shouldn't disturb this, and then a year later, the towers come down. I don't know. Like, that's just how, you know what I'm saying? Like,
You wish there's some sort of supernatural forces on our side right now.
that's what I'm saying. I need affordable housing. I'm not going to front, but I don't need it that bad.
Right.
So,
Right.
so
And what
so
they're calling affordable housing, they're saying like, you
don't
can
go.
get $80,000 a year and you need it's like most of the people in that area will need the rents to be much lower than someone who's making $85,000.
If they make it if they put a building there, $85,000, that place is definitely gonna be haunted.
Let me share something with y'all. Let me share something with y'all right quick, so you got an understanding, and I want all the viewers to know this too, right? So me and my family, we've applied for one of the affordable units as well, and we had to have an accumulative income of around $130,000 to
affordable
pay.
housing?
Right, to pay more than $3,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment. Just so you guys understand what, because I know a lot of you people don't actually live in New York City the way that we do, but just understand that affordable housing means $2,500 a month for a 1-bedroom. That means $2,200 for a studio. That means sometimes up to $3,200 for a 2-bedroom. Just so you understand what affordable means.
And it's not even like a real 2-bedroom that people would expect to have other places. It's like a little shoebox rooms that you're paying that much money for.
Don't remind me. I'm trying to romanticize this as much as I can. But you're absolutely correct.
Yeah. I mean, I think, this is one of the other things that's a part of my dream, is for young adults to be able to take over the walking tours as I've been doing them. Because when I started doing my research, I realized that, slavery in the North is largely ignored, right? The North had the highest concentration of slaves, Kings County particularly.
Yeah, people didn't realize that, like, New York City, the mayor at the time threatened to secede and join the Confederacy because we made so much money. Wall Street was that much money enslaved. That was made the most money was slavery in Wall Street. So of course, New York City is going to be like, we're going to secede and join Virginia. But
Exactly.
Instead of calling it the stock exchange, it's people in stocks exchange. Yeah. That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
Did you line that up?
Nah, it's just how my brain works. That's how my brain works.
No, but it's so true. Like, and Kings County and Queens County actually, fueled the rise of Manhattan because it was the place where all the agriculture was grown to feed people. And so there would be no Manhattan, no, people in stocks market without Brooklyn and Queens and the slaves that worked the ground at that time. And so, yeah, I think showing that history in a way where we can say, this is a history of resilience. It's a history of resistance as well, because, as part of the walking tour, one of the things that I bring up are ways that people escaped. People escaped all the time. Right in the area of the burial ground, there were notices, like runaway notices from the Bergens, whose street we see all over.
Oh, yeah, I heard there's a similar project of people pretty much noting all the different slave owner last names for Nostrad, Bergen, Stuyvesant. Every last name in Brooklyn is pretty much was like landowner, slave landowner. So this is what this, as a lot of ways, this burial ground kind of unravels that the same way that the recent kind of horrible things we saw with the residential schools with Native Americans. Like once people discovered these bodies, they discovered this whole other history of like how they were trying to pretty much convert by force Native children. And that's what that unraveled by showing that as an African burial ground in Brooklyn, that unravels the fact that this was like slavery in New York City right here.
Exactly. And like
Yeah.
one of the things that, oppressors do is destroy young people's connection to their own history and understanding, that their history isn't all one thing, that it's very complex and it's very rich. And I think, this is an opportunity. We're at a crossroads when it comes to this African burial ground, because we could reclaim that history if we stop the development. The fact that there's only that small piece left of what probably was a huge burial ground means that we have to kind of stop now.
But
And
but isn't that critical race theory? Isn't that gonna destroy our children and their self esteem?
I hate America now because I learned about this.
Because if the kids know about what was done,
I'm joining Al Qaeda now. I'm tired of this.
If the kids know about what was done to some of the people in this country, then how are they gonna love America?
right. It's like, you get to love all the fun parts of Black people, but you don't want to love our struggle. It's like, come on now.
That sounds like slavery. I just explained this to a white person the other day about like how the slaves were treated on the slave ships and how they gave extra space to the women. Right? I don't need to go any further than that, right? So you want to say that, subhuman this and, only, all of this stuff, but worse comes to worse. Let me shut the fuck up.
Yeah. No, I think about that all the time. You're not the only one. I'm kind of like, so what does that make you if you're beasts and,
So I just want to like the final thing, just to talk about like the next steps, like this, like what do you expect out of like this new, situation we now have with potential Eric Adams running right now, the same guy who was responsible almost for putting a building on top of those people. Like what do you demand from him if he gets elected?
I think accountability is going to be key. And, we have been talking with people who helped, get the National Monument up and running. And they have warned us. They're like, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So take your time, pace yourselves, get as much community support behind you as possible, and make it impossible to ignore that people don't want housing there. So that's basically what we're in the process of doing is, raising community awareness. We're going to be doing lots of deep canvassing work, talking to folks, getting as many people aware as possible. And then we could stop it. We actually can stop it. We've been told that there's a possibility, strong possibility, if we do things the way that they need to be done.
I don't know what you mean by national monument. Are you talking about like at Train and the one in World Trade?
Yeah, the one downtown, the African burial ground, the National Monument. It's called the National.
Oh, see, I'm completely ignorant to that. So for the people that are like me that didn't, because when you said National Monument, I'm thinking the monument that was made in the wake of 9/11.
Oh, okay.
But so now that I feel like I'm about to be educated, can you explain more about the African burial ground? I guess we're talking about like Battery City, like City Hall area.
Manhattan. It's not too far from Wall Street. And basically that burial ground was discovered, I think, around 1997. And there was a similar building that was planned, but even larger. I think it was 100 stories at the time. And then when they started excavating, they found bones. And that site was saved through community activism. It was a cross-sectoral group of people, activists, spiritual practitioners, historians, scholars. Everyone came together and basically stopped, the desecration of that site. And now there's a monument there that has an educational center that has, I think they call it the Arc of the Return. It's a big statue that represents the door of no return, but just in reverse for people of African descent. And I think, Brooklyn has been on the map for a long time. We could have a very similar situation in Brooklyn, and Flatbush could be at the heart of it. Instead of putting affordable housing, why not do a monument where young people can then begin to expound on their own history, potentially get paid to be tour guides, be educators, do walking tours like the ones that I'm doing, and then create something beautiful like that where we can reflect on the history of this nation,
This should have happened before the Barclays Center,
Let's not talk about the illegal building. That illegal building should have never been built ever. But then my question is, are these remains, did they return? So I think. All right. So when we talk about the actual remains in the burial grounds, both with the National Monument near Battery City and the one here on Flatbush, what became of the remains in these two sites?
Yeah, so the National Monument, they have these mounds next to the Ark of the Return. So those bones were carefully studied by Howard, and then they were reinterred in those mounds. The African burial ground in Flatbush, however, has been disturbed multiple times already. And basically, we don't really know what happened to the bones when they excavated the sewers on and started creating the sewers on Church Avenue, when they built the post office, when they built the gas station. We don't know what happened to those bones. And I think Rhodes, Messiah was showing a slide where in 1904, there was a newspaper clipping that when they were building the sewers, young white kids took teeth as souvenirs from a skeleton that they found, and they were parading around Church Avenue with the skeletal head on a stick. And, you know, so that's one instance of what happened to some of the bones, like people took pieces away as souvenirs. And then another thing that I heard happened was that the Dutch Reformed Church was given some bones, which for me, it's like you're giving back enslaved bones to the people who enslaved them. Like, what sense does that make? It makes
Here's your property, Massa. Here's your property. It's kind of gross.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. I can't argue with you there.
But you know, systemic racism, you know, it's not real. You know,
no critical race theory on that.
Nah. Yeah, you know. Yeah.
What race? What happened to racism? I thought it ended.
I don't know. A marathon, a sprint.
Yeah.
I don't know.
When you have a bike and you swim, it's triathlon. But thank you so much, Shanna, for coming on us on the show tonight.
No problem.
Yeah, so we're gonna just share all the links and then get everyone to know on the internet what's happening here in Flatbush and Brooklyn. You know, we have Brooklyn Nets, which have like, you know,
New Jersey Memorial. Nets. Get it right. New Jersey Nets. It's like when you are the victim of an occupation, you don't name the recreation of the occupiers. You don't give them the name of the place that they're occupying that they don't belong. So for everybody out there that follows NBA basketball, do not put the word Brooklyn next to Nets. They are the New Jersey Nets. They are just oppressive occupiers in our community that don't belong here.
Oh my goodness. You know, it's been a pleasure. Yes, thank you so much for having me. And we're having another walking tour on August 7th in front of the Flatbush African Burial Ground. So if anyone wants to join us, the links are on the website.